Chapter 28, Thanksgiving. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, Liz and I met again at the Rock Crusher. I thought about telling her about the phone call, but I was too embarrassed to repeat the man's words. "I did what you said," Liz, when we were settled on our usual rock. "And it didn't work," said Liz. Shirley started talking to Janet about how other folks were going to pay for me being so uppity. I didn't say a word, just started reciting the 9 timetables, counting on my fingers like you taught me. I got all the way to 7 times 9 is 63 before Shirley turned to me and said, "What are you doing?" She said it in a nasty voice, but it was the first time anyone had spoken to me in weeks, so I decided to answer her. "I'm reciting the 9 tables," I said, and I showed her how to do it. I only got to 3 times 9 is 27 before she and Janet started laughing and I started yelling again. The rest of the day, whenever I walked by, everyone giggled their fingers at me and snickered. "I'm so sorry," Liz shrugged, but I felt horrible. My plan had failed. I had made things worse for her. She'd helped me learn to talk, and I couldn't even teach her how to be quiet. I could figure it out. When I was upset, calculating the area of a triangle or adding up columns or numbers or reciting pi always helped me. Then I realized that was it. Liz simply wasn't a numbers person. She liked words. If she was going to be quiet, we had to go about it in a different way. What if, when you felt the words build up, instead of saying them out loud, you wrote them down? "Wrote them down?" asked Liz. "Yeah," I said. "You can carry around a notebook like little Jimmy does." "I guess that might work," Liz said slowly. "You could say whatever you wanted, as long as no one reads it." "Well," Liz smiled. It was worth a try. Thanksgiving morning was cold and gray. Central was playing its last football game of the season. Daddy and David were going, and I tagged along with them, leaving Mother at home to cook the turkey. Judy and Granny were coming in the afternoon, just in time for dinner. The game started at 10:30, and I shivered as I sat on the bleachers, wishing I put on a warmer coat. In the first quarter, Red intercepted a pass. Everyone cheered, everyone except for me. David glanced over. "How you doing, sis?" "Cold," I said. David laughed, took off his own jacket and draped it over my shoulders. The jacket was warm and old, and it smelled like it hadn't been washed in a really long time. "Mr. Harding is teaching me algebra," I said during a timeout. "Algebra?" David didn't say anything about it being a high school class, and I loved him for it. "How's it going?" "Fine," I said. Then, 'cause it was my brother and I figured I could brag a little. "Actually, really well. I like it, and he says I'm really good at it." "Phew," said David, wiping his eyebrow. "Marley, you're making me feel so much better." "Me? How?" He glanced over at Daddy, but he was engaged in conversation with a neighbor and wasn't listening to us. "I dropped out of all those math classes. I'm studying English now, like Daddy did." He wiped his brow again. "Sure is a relief to know someone else will be taking care of beating those Soviets." I grinned. "Mr. Harding says he sleeps better at night knowing there are girls like me to invent those satellites." "That Mr. Harding," he tousled my hair, "sounds like a really smart man." Judy was waiting for us on the front porch when we got home from the game. I screamed and ran and I gave her a hug, and she smelled different, like she'd been trying a new shampoo. After we said our hellos to everyone, Judy and I ran off to her old room. As soon as the door was closed, I turned to Judy. "Guess what?" we both said at the same time. We laughed. It was so good to be with my sister again. "You first," I said. "I have a boyfriend," Judy squealed. She pulled a picture out of her purse and shoved it into my hands. It was a snapshot of her and a skinny boy with thick brown hair sticking up in all directions. They were at a rolling rink holding hands. They were both grinning so big a raccoon could have crawled up in their mouths and settled down inside. "It's Robert Lawrence," she said. "Who?" I asked. "The boy I told you about when you cut your thumb." Judy didn't even take a breath before she continued. "His parents sent him to live with his uncle in Pine Bluff. I didn't even know because we never really said much to each other at Central. But in Pine Bluff, of course we started spending time together because we were both from Little Rock. And then he asked me out to the movies, and then we started going steady." I was beginning to think the new shampoo wasn't the only change. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Mother reads our mail," said Judy. That was true. "Besides, if Mother knew I had a boyfriend, she'd make Daddy bring me home." "Don't you want to come home?" I asked. "Of course I do," said Judy. "When the schools reopen and Robert Lawrence can come too." I spent the past 2 months thinking she was miserable, and it turned out that wasn't the case at all. She fooled me along with Mother, and I didn't like it. Judy sat down on the bed and started unpacking her clothes. What was your news? I'd been planning to tell her about Liz and JT and the nasty phone call and everything. But now, it wasn't like anything had really changed. She just had a boyfriend. But I still felt like I had been betrayed. I joined the Women's Emergency Committee, I said finally. We're trying to get the schools reopened. That's great, said Judy. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Last I heard, she wasn't even sure she was in favor of integrating the schools. Now she wanted to help? More likely, she just wanted to make sure she and Robert Lawrence came home together. And even though Judy had always been the one I told everything, I kept the rest of the news locked up tight inside me. I'd always thought Judy was an ice-cold Coca-Cola. Now it seemed like she'd gone flat. We went to bed early, but in the middle of the night I woke up. The phone was ringing. One short ring and one long. For a minute I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard my parents' door open and Daddy stumble into the hall. I scrambled out of bed. Daddy was slamming down the phone when I reached the kitchen. Who was it? I asked. Wrong number, said Daddy. Go back to bed. Before I got back to my room, the phone rang again. This time Daddy left it off the hook. Judy slept on. So I wonder who was trying to call. I wonder if it was the same person that called Marley that awful name on the last phone call.